Good evening. I am so excited. I cannot believe the turnout that we have tonight. My name is Noelle Fern, and I serve as the Dean of the School of Social Work. In addition to social work, our school provides education, training, mentorship, and academic and professional degree programs in applied behavior analysis and, of course, criminology and criminal justice. Our school is unique. It is a gem. It is a truly interdisciplinary school focused on living our mission, supporting one another and our community, and the pursuit of human justice. It is one of a kind, and I am honored to serve as the dean and work alongside our students, our staff, and our faculty each day. So, huge thank you for joining us this evening to honor the memory, work, care, and legacy left by our friend and our colleague, Norm White, here at our school's 6th annual Dr. Norman A. White Memorial Celebration. We did miss a couple during the pandemic. So thank you, huge thank you to both our SLU and the wider St. Louis community members for taking part in our opening reception. We hope you took advantage of the opportunity to engage in meaningful discussions, perhaps share or learn about helpful resources, and maybe even meet a new friend. A bit later this evening, we'll hear from a couple of Norm's colleagues and friends about the work they did together and how they continue to carry on his legacy through their lives and their work today. I would like to give a special shout out to the School of Social Work's small but mighty team for making this evening's event possible and amazing and lovely with food. This includes particularly Rebecca Schultz, Shelby Tarkington, and Jess Kilmade. They're around, if you would wave. A million thank yous isn't enough to show our appreciation for all that you do to support the School of Social Work, the university, our faculty, our students, our alumni, and one another. I'd also be remiss if I didn't also give a special shout out to our Atlas Week partners. Thank you so much for making this event the hallmark event of Atlas Week. It's a huge honor, and I know that Norm would be proud. We've got a full room tonight and a lot of VIP guests, so bear with me because I want to send special shout outs to recognize our distinguished guests and friends this evening. I'm not going to embarrass you all. You're welcome to just wave, but I think it's important for our crowd and the folks who have loved and worked with Norm to know that the provost and soon to be president of St. Anselm College, Mike Lewis, is in attendance tonight. Emeritus School of Social Work Director and Professor of Social Work, Don Lindhorst, is here tonight. Vice President for Medical Affairs and the Dean of the Medical School, Chris Jacobs, is here tonight. The Dean of our College for Public Health and Social Justice, Dr. Leslie McClure, is here tonight. Our next door neighbor and main competitor, Dean Gary Ritter, is here tonight. And I saw our Vice President for Student Development sneak in over here too. So Matt Goodwin, y'all, has joined us tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you. Our faculty are here. We've got wonderful faculty, students, awardees, and we will get to all the festivities. Soon, Liz and our panelists will be introduced, but I would like to take a bit of time to talk about my friend and colleague, Dr. Norm White, who died suddenly of a heart attack in December of 2017. Liz, as I read that over and over, I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot believe it's been almost a decade. So to call his death a tragic loss is a huge understatement. The criminology and criminal justice faculty, our students, the alums, and our entire school, and really our university community continue to miss his presence and his influence immensely. Dr. White, or Norm as he preferred to be called, described himself as a developmental criminologist. He joined the faculty at SLU as an assistant professor of criminology and criminal justice after serving on UMSL's CCJ faculty for several years. I first met Norm in 1997 during my doctoral studies at UMSL, and I was thrilled to join him on faculty at SLU when I came back home to St. Louis a decade later. Norm held a number of academic and leadership roles in criminology and criminal justice, the School of Social Work, our former college, and at the university. He was also an affiliated faculty member in SLU's African American Studies program, which is now a department, and he served as Associate Dean for Community Engagement and Partnerships in the College for Public Health and Social Justice. Norm worked tirelessly. He worked tirelessly for kids and for change, particularly in the juvenile justice system. He recognized that there are children, as he stated, who, quote, don't get the right to grow up, and those who are, quote, immersed in risk. Norm sought first and foremost to understand the communities in which these children lived and the trauma they experienced. His work was reflected in a book he co-authored that was published the very year he died, called Roots of African American Violence, Ethnocentrism, Cultural Diversity, and Racism. Norm collaborated with the St. Louis Public School District to reduce school suspensions and to implement trauma-informed teaching initiatives within its classrooms. His project, called Shut It Down, Closing the School to Prison Pipeline, was and continues to be funded by a consortium of St. Louis foundations. Norm also worked with students on SLU's campus to develop the Overground Railroad to Literacy project. Through this program, SLU students provide tutoring and local after-school programs in low-income areas to improve student academic performance. SLU remains committed to supporting both projects to honor Norm's memory and to continue advancing his important work. This annual memorial celebration is just one way that we get to remember Norm and honor his example of how we can and should live our lives for others. SLU's Faculty Senate also honors his legacy by bestowing each year on one deserving faculty member the Dr. Norman A. White Award for Engaged Scholarship and Service. And our Criminology and Criminal Justice program bestows upon a graduating senior each year the Dr. Norman A. White Service in Justice Award. This year's winner will be honored tonight after the panel. To be sure, Norm was highly respected for his community engaged and really his community immersed service, advocacy, teaching, and research. We remember him today and every day for all of this, but also for his passion for using knowledge to bring about meaningful change in the lives and the hearts of real-world people, our communities, and society at large. He truly embodied the best of St. Louis and St. Louis University. In selecting panelists for our 6th annual Dr. Norman A. White Memorial Celebration, it was critically important that we identified people who not only embody the commitment to social and human justice that guided Norm's lives, but also those who worked with him in important ways on projects that were so critical to him and that are still active today. This evening, we are honored to be joined by 3 such individuals: our panelists Brian Sokol, Bridget McDermott Flood, Nebu Kolancherry, and I am especially grateful that they are here to share their personal perspectives and reflections. It is now my honor and pleasure to invite Liz White, Norm's wife, to come forward to give a further introduction for our panelists and share a little bit more about Norm. Liz?
Thank you, Noelle. And thank you to SLU and the School of Social Work for continuing to honor Norm and his work. I am truly grateful. Norm often began talking about his work by singing. I believe that children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. It was all about the children for Norm. He believed that if we wanted to make a lasting change in people's lives and in our communities, we needed to invest in children. And Norm was tireless in his work. He spoke to groups of people, appealed to organizations, gathered resources to invest in people to bring about change. From his work in the juvenile justice system to Overground Railroad and Shut It Down programs, to collaborations with his students. And he loved his students. Sorry. He wanted to give them the opportunities to learn to grow through service, and they continuously inspired him with their passion, their purpose, and boundless energy. So it's fitting that tonight's panel features three individuals who worked closely with Norm on these very programs and initiatives. I am very excited that Brian, Bridget, and Nebu agreed to be part of our panel tonight. For those of you who don't know our panelists, I would like to quickly introduce them. Bridget McDermott Flood has served as Executive Director of the Incarnate Word Foundation since its founding in 1998, where she integrates the sisters' incarnational spirituality into community-focused initiatives such as STL Youth Jobs, Art Place STL, and St. Louis Survivors Legal Services. She is the author of Blue Hole Wisdom, My Journey with the Sisters, and holds a Master of Arts in Urban Affairs from St. Louis University. Her leadership experience includes service on a White House task force under the Obama administration and national review panels for HHS, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Education, as well as board roles with Headwaters Sanctuary, St. Joseph Housing Initiative, and Notre Dame High School. Next up on the panel, we have Dr. Brian Sokol. Dr. Sokol is a fellow at the Herman Center for Innovative Catholic Education and holds joint appointments in St. Louis University School of Education and Department of Psychology. Since joining SLU in 2007, he has served in multiple leadership roles, including Director of the Center of Social Action and Assistant Vice President in the Division of Diversity and Innovative Community Engagement. His research focuses on psychological and social factors that foster positive youth development, especially ways to bolster young persons' sense of agency, empathy, purpose, and spirituality. Brian earned his BA in philosophy from SLU in 1992 and his PhD in developmental psychology from the University of British Columbia in 2004. His work appears in leading scholarly journals, and he has edited several books and presented widely at academic conferences. He is currently authoring Mind at the Museum, exploring the intersection of art, psychology, mindfulness, and social justice. And last but not least, we have Nebu Kolancherry on the panel. Nebu graduated from SLU in 2015 and returned for his MPH and graduated in 2023. He is the Chief Revenue Officer for Flourish and Thrive Labs, a consulting firm that supports data modernization projects in state and local public health departments. Prior to that, he was the Director for Communicable Disease Response at the St. Louis County Department of Public Health. He has also consulted for federal health care and public health clients, including the CDC and the Department of Defense. Nebu believes that a well-functioning public health department is the best example of a representative democracy. He was recently recognized by the de Beaumont Foundation as one of the nation's 40 under 40 in public health and serves on the Board of Health for the City of St. Louis. As you can see, our panelists are powerful agents of change, shaping stronger, more just communities, both locally and beyond. Their work embodies Norm's belief in the transformative power of education, community, and justice. And as we hear from them this evening, we celebrate their work as well as the enduring legacy of Norm, a legacy that continues to inspire action and change. It's my honor to present this year's panel. Please join me in giving them a warm welcome as they come forward.
All right. How's everybody doing? Yeah? Well, I just want to say thank you all again for joining us tonight. Thank you all again for joining us tonight. To start us off, I don't know that we can top the introduction that Liz gave, but if you could please introduce yourselves, tell us just a little bit more about your background, the organization that you're currently a part of, and the communities that you serve. And don't forget to turn those mics on.
All right, we're going to start with the least impressive person here. Hi, I'm Nebu Kolancherry. Liz, that was very kind. Okay, the relevant part of my bio here that might be important is that Norm and I got to work together for a while, but most importantly, following the death of Mike Brown in 2014, we did some work to start that organization over there. And the fact that that thing is going is the coolest thing in my life. So go those students, give them a really big round of applause there. Yeah. Um, and the work that I do now are how I, continue Norm's legacy is to try to affect change in public health departments. So I work a lot with government public health. Pleasure to be here with all of you.
That one works. Okay. I'm Brian Sokol, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Also, just want to say how grateful I am to be on the stage with some really impressive folks, but also some of the impressive folks that are here in the audience. I am so glad that Liz sang and spared you all from my voice. My role here at the university, as you heard, was as a psychology professor. I do a bit of community partnership work with a nearby school, Loyola Academy Middle School, and some of the community engagement pieces of working in our School of Education through a new center called the Herman Center. And it's been just really, really rewarding work. I love being able to connect with young people, connect with the people who support those young people, particularly teachers, but then all the students that are here that are also really engaged in community work as well. So thank you. You needed the 40 under 40.
I was just going to say, you can tell we went from youngest to oldest here because I'm like, is it just me or it's probably just me? But I'm Bridget, and I would say the important thing to know is not really more about me, but really the influence that Norm has had. I met Norm years ago at the foundation when he called and wanted to talk to me about what he always called doing the work, and we were kind of off to the races. And I would say that his impact at the foundation lives to the present day because what he taught us about how to work in community, how to walk with people, walk behind people instead of in front of people. Because at a foundation, you've got the cash, right? So suddenly everybody is your best friend. I've never been thinner. I've never had better clothes. I've never been smarter than I am today. And if I leave the foundation tomorrow, suddenly people will say, was that a person there or is that just some invisible shadow of a ghost? So Norm really taught me a lot personally, and I continue to owe him a huge debt.
Thank you all. I am so thrilled that you guys agreed to be a part of this panel tonight and that you're here. It's really special for me to get to talk with you all and hear your insights. All of you had the unique opportunity to work closely with Norm. Can you share how you first met him and then in what capacity you worked together? So I know some of you kind of touched on that already, but yeah.
Hello. Okay. So it really is. There's some people with PhDs on the stage and some without. You know what I mean? Um, Okay, I actually love the story. I'm so excited to be able to share it. So, when I met Norm, it was in this room. I did not know that we were going to be here, so this is such a treat. It was my friend. Can you wave at me? I'm pointing. Yeah, I was sitting at that table right there. This is so weird that I didn't. This is crazy. So there used to be this event at SLU. I don't. It might still be here, called State of St. Louis, and the idea was that there was a discussion event where students could talk about different things in the community. So there was like a table on health, a table on education, a table on what have you. And my freshman year, so this would have been 2011, I somehow got elected to the e-board of that organization. So I was like very fancy. And I was the facilitator at that table. How it worked was every table had a student facilitator, me, and then a faculty expert on whatever that topic was. I have no idea what the topic was or whatever, but I'm super nervous and very eager, right? I'm gonna really facilitate this conversation. 18 years old. And so I'm sweating and I'm like in like an ill-fitting blazer and trying to, awkward my way through this. And then I sense a presence next to me. And um this person in like a flannel shirt and jeans shows up, and I look, and he's pretty tall, and he sits down, and no ID, nothing. Right? And I was like, maybe older student. Um, and so we started a discussion, and I was like, sorry, our faculty advisor isn't here yet. And he goes, nope, me. I'm like, oh, Dr. White. Um, and so how the discussion worked was that the faculty advisor got to go first, right? And say some introduction about the topic. And Norm said, this country was founded on a lie. That was the first sentence I remember Norm saying, this country was founded on a lie. And he went on to explain, there was a document that was written, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And then a second document was written that said some men are worth 3/5 others. And his point was that is the legacy of the discrepancy between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that we're still fighting all these years later. So that's how I met Norm. The second part was what we worked together. Yeah. Happy to do that. But one of the big things I want to do today is like there's this lionization of the dude, and he's well deserving of it. I know these two other people next to me knew the guy, and he was a silly man. He was a funny man. He was a really brilliant man too, but like that part is important. So I would tell this story to other people. Normally, I would tell the story like this. However, if Norm was next to me, I would embellish. For example, this guy had diamond earrings. This guy didn't wear shoes. And it got all the way up to, this guy was 7 foot tall and wearing overalls without a shirt on and was chewing straw. And it made him so mad, and it made me so happy. Okay, the work that, so I'm sorry, I'm taking so long. So that's when I met him. And then we would see each other at events. But where we really became close was I was an orientation leader for SLU 101. And I was assigned to the then College of Public Health and Social Justice, which was the School of Social Work I just joined. And so I would walk social work students over to their faculty mentor for a summer. And that was Norm at that point. And so we would just crack jokes for a while. We became friends over that summer. Then I went and studied abroad, and I'm happy to talk more about this later if you'd like. And when I came back, we put a mission trip together because there was mission trips to Belize, mission trips to West Virginia, mission trips to whatever. And I was like, why isn't there one to St. Louis? And so Norm helped me put that together. Brian helped me put that together. And then after Mike Brown was killed, the city was different, the campus was different, and all of us were essentially asking the question, how do we be good neighbors? And Norm had this idea that like the need in the community's tutoring, and I said, well, let's marry that with the need of the students to want to know their neighbors. And that's how Overground was born, and got to do a whole bunch of other fascinating things with the man that year, and it was a dear friend after that. So thanks.
Yeah, see.
pass the other two down to the young person on the panel, and he can fix those while I go on. Well, I was trying to think back to when I first met Norm, but at first all I could think of was quilting, about quilting. And then I realized there was more to it than quilting. And I met Norm at meetings that were being held at the time. This was right before Michael Brown was killed, and then subsequent to that, about children in St. Louis. And people were having meetings to produce reports. You will find in your career that people are going to ask you to be going to a lot of meetings to produce reports. And when you do, go to the meetings and then raise a little cane, because that's what Norm did. And that's how we got to be friends. So we're at these meetings, and Norm's like, it's about weaving a quilt. We have to weave all the resources together in the community. It's not about collective impact. It's not about Ready by 21 or For Sake of all these reports. It's about weaving a quilt and bringing people in with their gifts and finding a way to take care of the community and wrap the community in a quilt that's drawn from all of us. And so my reaction to this was to say, Norm, you don't weave a quilt. I'm a quilter. You don't weave a quilt, you sew a quilt. And he's like, Bridget, you weave the quilt. And I'm like, I know it sounds great to say weave, but you don't weave. You sew. To the point where I finally made him a small table quilt so that he could see there were stitches. There was no weaving. But based on those interactions, Norm and I started working together. And then Norm came to me with Shut It Down and his work in the public schools, which I thought was groundbreaking. The Overground Railroad, groundbreaking, and that's how we got to be friends.
Yeah, wow. I can't remember actually when our first encounter was. I'm sure as faculty it happened in some nondescript room at in a subcommittee of some kind. But the moment that kind of stands out really, Norm had written a paper reflecting on Mike Brown's death. He called it In the Light of Mike Brown. And I remember going to the Ferguson Uprising March in October after that, and I had my two youngest children with me at the time, and he walked with them, and he was tall, especially next to my two children, and one of them, I won't say which one, said, "Dr. White, you're not white." That was the embarrassing moment that kind of bonded us together. And then we got to be friends. He's very goofy. He was a very goofy person. And he was very fond of nicknames. I have a few phone messages that I've kept that he would say, "Hey, Felix," and this was his reference to The Odd Couple. Most people in this room are probably not going to remember The Odd Couple, Oscar and Felix, but Oscar was the consummate slob. Felix was the kind of anal retentive roommate that kept everything, in order. And if he had seen my office, he probably would never have thought of me as Felix. But nevertheless, I was Felix for a period of time. And then as we got to be closer, I was the best man in the wedding with Liz, and I think I was told, that I should behave. But we did give a toast. He was at that time referring to Dr. Jonathan Smith and Dr. Kent Porterfield, who were both administrators here at SLU, as well. We were all the Musketeers, and so he referred to the group as the Musketeers. And so I remember doing a toast to that extent. I was the young person at that time, and I had zero gray in my beard, which I now apparently have a lot of. So those were kind of the ways that I got to know him. If I can share just one memory, though, the Musketeers were heading off together to an award banquet. He was receiving the 2017 Excellence in Mental Health Award from the St. Louis County Children's Service Fund and the St. Louis American Foundation. And the memory I have is of how it started. And the greeting that the organizer offered was, "And how are the children?" And everyone said, "The children are well." And I thought, huh, what's that all about? And, Norm had to explain it to me, that in some African cultures, that is the traditional greeting, to ask about the status of children in the community. And that was a marker of the well-being of that community, was through the life of their children. And I really do think that Norm recognized that the health of our children and our community were the most important assets and the best marker for whether we were healthy as a whole.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, all of you. Obviously, Norm had such a profound impact on the people around him. Do you all have a favorite memory or moment with him that stands out in your mind?
Okay.
Okay.
How about that?
There we go. I'll just keep passing.
This has got to be one of the most embarrassing moments I've had in a while. Yes, I do. And I actually brought it with me. One of my favorite memories, you have one? This is sort of like the secret talisman of Norm White. Norm would go around and he would pass out these coins. And on one side, there's an angel. And when I first got it, I looked at the angel. I'm like, really, Norm? This is a little weird. But then on the back, it says guardian. And I keep this coin on my desk. It's kind of tarnished because I fool around with it a lot when I'm worried or thinking about something. But I really think that's how Norm saw himself and saw his friends and the people around him who were helping him with his work. Because, and I thought about this as I was thinking about talking to all of you, that to me, the most important thing is for you to become guardians, because that's what the world needs. We need more guardians, particularly where children are concerned. Our country isn't very kind to children here in the United States. I could quote some research like UNICEF, of the industrialized countries, the United States is like 24th and 25th on practically any indicator you want to pick. And that report was done a while back, so I'm sure we're even more in the dumper than we were before, especially now. So it's important to have people in the community who are guardians, people like yourselves who are going to be working with young people, advocating for them, and doing what's right and speaking truth to power, because Norm did that every day of his life. He really did.
Great. This one's not. Okay. Oh, yeah, I like this. This is, oh, no? Okay. Norm did have this kind of affection for angels. I remember walking into his office, and there was it was a little creepy, actually. I mean, there was like hundreds of little figurines of angels and pictures of angels, and he took that very, very seriously. But one of the memories I'd like to share was he doted over his mom, who was referred to as Chief. Chief struggled a little bit with breathing and kind of had an oxygen tank that he would, help shuttle around. And we were having dinner at our house, and it was the first time I had met the mom, Chief. I can't remember. Melissa, maybe it was the first time he'd been over for dinner, and we had lit some candles, which next to oxygen, not good. And so we quickly, extinguished all of those. But Chief liked to tell stories about her son, and one of the stories that I was really touched by was that growing up in New York, in the city, he was playing basketball when he was a young teenager, I think, at a Catholic school. And I guess he was the only black child on the court. And the priest who was the chaperone at that school that day said, "Hey, you don't belong here," even though he completely did belong there. And, he was asked to leave. And I think that made, well, first of all, although Norm wasn't recalling all of this, if it was Chief, she said, he wrote a letter to that priest explaining exactly why he belonged, but also exactly why he would never come back to the Catholic Church again because of that. And I think being here at SLU was a time of healing for him in many ways with the Catholic Church through the Jesuits and the Jesuits' charism. But I also think that moment did not harden his heart so much that he did not also make a commitment that he was always going to ensure that young black men, young black children particularly, felt like they belonged. So.
Yes. Okay. I do have a couple. So the one that is none of it is like justice or it's all these silly things like hanging out with Chief. Chief was so funny too. Um, so the what? Okay. If as y'all can tell, the death of Mike Brown was a big deal in all of our lives. The police officer that shot him was this man named Darren Wilson. When the verdict for in that court case was about to come down, everyone kind of knew that he would be acquitted. And there were a lot of protests that were expected. And so then we came back to this question of like how should the campus respond? And Norm was interested in this idea of like sanctuary, like if SLU is part of the community, SLU has to be part of the community. And so we organized this safe space in the basement of St. Francis Xavier Church, and basically call it church. And it took a lot, and it's a whole host of things. And I don't know, but there was this idea that maybe we should prepare for, in case someone was tear gassed, that we should prepare to like help them. And like one of the remedies, I think, do you remember this? It was like Maalox and water. Is that right? And so the day before, Norm and I are like mixing bottles of Maalox and water. We had like a case of this. And then the day came, nothing happened. It was like this very beautiful, like people were talking and hanging out and eating snacks and, whatever. But then for like months, maybe even years, for some reason, he had that like case of water bottles and Maalox in his car. And he would just drive around with it and be like, "Oh, I got the Maalox." I'm like, you can throw it out. The other two things I want to talk about was at that time, I was dating this woman named Lizzie. And then so Norm, most of the time I knew him, what was Norm. And then one day, there was Liz. And it's kind of like that weird thing where like when you see your teacher at the grocery store and you're like, wait, you're like a real person? And then Norm changed. Norm was much happier so one of my very favorite memories is him calling me and he's like, "Hey, we should all get dinner." And I was like, "Who?" And he's like, me and you and our Lizzies," which is like so cringy. Oh my God. And the last thing, sorry, this is probably, it's funny that I'm talking to probably a room full of social workers actively processing Norm's death, to be honest with you. But my last memory of Norm was the wedding. And you don't really hang out with the bride and groom at the wedding. So Brian and I hung out a bunch. But my last memory of Norm is after they got married, they jumped their boom and they're walking down the aisle. And I don't know if you know, I high-fived Norm. And like that is my last memory of him. There's like a video in their wedding video. There's like my hand is in it at the end. And that's how I remember the guy. Because he was so damn happy that day. Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. Those memories and moments are so special. It's very obvious that Norm's vision was clear. He believed in the power of education, equity, and advocacy to transform lives. How does the work that you're doing today carry that vision forward in your communities? We'll try.
You know, I do have a very loud voice because I have children and grandchildren, so I could probably do it without this. I'm just going to put that out there. But I thought about that, and I could rattle on about all the things we fund. But I think the thing that Norm right now would be most interested in that we're doing is our work with tornado relief, because the tornado relief issue is a big one. And I think we're stuck. I was just up in North St. Louis yesterday and at a meeting with all kinds of, Norm would have just gone crazy because it was all people just giving statistics and reports and, oh, we're going to do these giant things. And meanwhile, people are living in houses that are still covered with tarps. And it's not just one house or 10 houses, it's thousands, thousands of houses. I am not exaggerating here. And so, what we're going to be doing at the foundation is we're starting to repair houses. And we fixed 5. That's a small number. My goal is to fix at least 15 more in the next couple of months, which will be 10% of what the city of St. Louis says that they're going to fix. Now, think about that. The city of St. Louis this year is going to fix 250 houses. That's what they said. And by home repair, I could go on and on about this, so just get the pole to ring me off the stage. But they're not talking about you walk in and you can just live there. They're talking about they're putting up the drywall. They showed a picture of drywall on the one floor, and the second floor is down to the studs and the lath board. And they're saying that's repaired. The people we're working with, we've done 5. We've done things like made it livable so you would want to move in there. We also fix people's furnaces because if your furnace isn't working, I don't care if the tornado knocked it out or not. You can't live there if your furnace, I don't want people dying of carbon monoxide poisoning. So tomorrow I'm going to go up and meet with this priest, and he's got a whole list of people that need their houses fixed. We're moving on to him now. But I thought of Norm, and Norm would be in that car with me. He would. And the whole way he'd be saying, can you believe? And I'd be like, no, can you believe? And we'd be complaining the entire ride up there. Because that's the other thing I wanted to say about Norm is that we make him sound like it was all a bed of roses and he was happy and laughing and everything was peachy keen all the time. But I mean, he struggled. And I'm just going to say this, the president of the university isn't here. I know the provost is, so if he's still here, just close your ears, don't listen. But I mean, towards the end of his time, he was really struggling because the university had put him into a position of being like the dean of like equity or something. I don't remember the exact title. And he was like, I feel like I'm being used here. I feel like I'm being played and we're not getting the work done. And, you know, I go to these meetings and they aren't doing this and they aren't doing that. He was frustrated. And so it's not always going to be a bed of roses. We're making Norm sound like this guy that everything was perfect in his life. And he struggled and he had a lot of righteous anger, and that's important too.
I'm so glad Bridget brought that up. I think about this constantly. So for me, I think Norm really had this tension between like institutions and the community and what that was. And I was definitely more on the institution side. I definitely like, and I'm not comparing us by any means, but I, as a young student and still today, believe in that my place and where I am most effective is working within institutions to create change. And I think I know Norm kind of went back and forth in a lot of ways. And so where that shows up is like I work in government. The city of St. Louis has plenty that they should probably do better. But the way I choose to do that is I serve on the city's board of health and try to move that forward. I want to work in government. However, what working with Norm showed me was So I am Indian. I am brown in a black and white city. So I was an immigrant. I moved here when I was to the Chicago when I was 13 and really didn't have a voice for any of that until really I came to St. Louis and met people like Norman Bryan and finally got vocabulary around how to deal with issues of identity. And part of that was volunteering, whatever. And what Norm taught me was that, sure, work within institutions, but then your responsibility is to take and elevate the voices of those who you encounter. And so in my work, that's what I tried to do within institutions.
Well, I can actually, I can let you listen to some of that frustration. Is this okay? Okay. If I could, I'm like now using two pieces of technology, so.
Doing, also, I wrote a thread on I think it may have been Monday or Tuesday. And that, no, it was actually Thursday. Yeah, for the world. Anyway, I wrote him, and by just some sheer coincidence, he actually was writing me at the exact same time, saying that he wanted to talk to me about the Accords. I will forward the letter I sent to him because I just felt like I had to do it, and it was just where I was at the moment. So you know how I get. Okay, all for one and one for all. I told him that he needs to meet with me, you, Jonathan, and Kent as a group and kind of as a team because of who we are.
I won't go on with that, but I think while he did have a relationship with the president of our university and some frustrations with our institution for sure. I also think that he drew a lot of support from people, his colleagues in the School of Social Work, Jonathan, Kent, many of his students. And so while he was deeply frustrated and troubled at times, I also think he was an inherently hopeful person. And so I think that's important to remember about him. Well, actually, this was supposed to be a little bit of a question of like how he's inspired us to do other things or what's been next. For me, at least, it's been working in our School of Education with some of the partnerships with the local schools, and particularly the one that I've grown close to is Loyola Academy, which is a middle school of entirely African American boys. And they actually have a lot of resources, and they're doing some really wonderful things at that school. They're one of the more notable basketball teams, for instance, in the Catholic Youth Conference here in the city. And while that would resonate with me, especially, and Norm, because we love basketball, that's not what I do with them. Sorry. I knew this was going to happen at some point. But thinking about Norm, he was one of the most empathic people I'd ever met. He could connect, and that's what song was for him, right? That's why he would sing. And anyway, so these seventh graders that come over to campus, we build our empathy skills, and it's pretty simple. We look at artwork in our SLU museums, particularly the Museum of Contemporary Religious Art, MOCRA. And you would think that that would be like the most boring thing that a seventh grader could possibly do. But oh my God, they lock in like you cannot believe. And we don't just look at art for the 28 seconds that research has shown. Most people will look at something the longest time they'll look at something in an art gallery is less than 30 seconds. We visit the same work of art 3 times over the course of 8 weeks. And each time they sit with that work for about 10 to 20 minutes, depending. And then they share. And in many cases, and we have our SLU students that are kind of accompanying them. That includes my graduate students and some of my undergraduate students. In every case, when you ask that seventh grader to talk about that work of art, it's like they're geniuses. Of course, they don't have a lot of experience with art, but my students are like, wow, they see things, they connect with things. And then if you connect that to the kind of idea of Ignatian spirituality and the kind of Jesuit mission of our university and also the shared mission at Loyola, artwork is a way to connect. It's a way to develop our psychological senses, if you will. It's a way to develop our empathy. And those kids can do it like you can't believe. They're the next Norm Whites, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you guys for sharing. It is evident that the work that you're doing truly carries on Norm's vision and his mission. This year's Atlas Week theme is For Those Who Come After, Building Together a Better Future in Today's World. When you think about your work through that lens, how do you see it contributing to a future that extends beyond St. Louis, whether that's influencing systems inspiring others or advancing social justice or human rights more broadly? That's a big question, I know.
I got this,
Yeah. Well, remember I shared that greeting and how are the children, and I described that it was part of some African cultures, and honestly, it's part of a more robust kind of worldview or philosophical system that Norm, whether he was explicit about it or not, certainly lived, and it's this idea of well, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Ubuntu, or the idea that my humanity is tied to yours. And I think that's very much an Atlas Week theme over and over and over again every year. But that philosophy and that sense of shared humanity grew in importance with two figures you've probably heard of, Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa. And so I would say that Norm moved in a way that affirmed the humanity of others. He resisted hierarchy or structures that kind of put people into categories and then rank them. And he always chose to connect, particularly on the very personal level, over being behind a desk or in an office, which was a source of frustration for him. And I think that's what Norm reminds me of in the context of Atlas Week.
This is a weird. I was an Atlas Week intern, so this is just a treat. So I have just in a lot of ways, I want to go back to that institution thing. The way that I see my work now is that I really do believe that public health departments are the best, like most salient examples of democracy today. At least that's where I'm going to focus my energy. And my personal definition of public health is the successful redefining of what's unacceptable. And it's done that. And so the way I look at, can I see the theme again, please? Not great memory. Yes. For those who come after, right? I'm now, again, not working as close to community as I would like. However, what I'm trying very hard to do is build foundations and structures and processes in organizations that do work with community so that they are better and building that foundation through the lens of a health department. And that's the best I got.
Well, I guess what I would say is that I keep the Oscar Romero prayer on my desk where he talks about how nothing we do is perfect. We can't do anything alone. We plant the seed and someone else will harvest it. We start the work and someone else will do it. And I think about Norm, and Norm started a lot of work and others are doing that work now. The foundation starts a lot of work. We started St. Joseph Housing, and now others are leading St. Joseph Housing, and I will know that the work comes to fruition where they don't even talk about the Incarnate Word Foundation, because it's not about us, and walking humbly is a real value that I think is undervalued in our society. I think that if we were a little more humble about the work, and let others do the work, let others step forward and lead, the world would be a much better place. It's not always about us, and particularly when you think internationally. I was thinking about this because this is a hard question, this last question. The world is kind of a mess, and we probably shouldn't talk about politics, but I mean, the United States has kind of become this force. It's like a force on steroids. But now, finally, the rest of the world, Pope Leo, I think is really helping with this. The European leaders, some of the Asian leaders, people are finally saying, no, we have ideas. We can lead. And recently I was in Kenya for a couple of weeks with some sisters, and the level of leadership I saw was humbling, because they are leading. And so I think that could be actually something good that comes out of this, what I consider to be a rather long time in the fifth ring of purgatory and Dante's Inferno. I think that something good that will come out of this is others are leading and we can learn from them. We don't have to have all the answers. Other people have much better answers than we do. And now they're ready to punch us in the face and say, you need to listen to us, which I just love. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's kind of how I see it.
Thank you. Very, very well said. And that leads me to my next question. For those in the audience who feel inspired tonight and want to be a part of building that kind of future for those who come after, what can they actually do? Where can they start, either locally or in supporting broader efforts for justice and equity?
Yeah, so this university changed my life because of where it's located. I think St. Louis historically has been the laboratory for a lot of bad things, and therefore you can learn about a lot of bad things and how you can make them better. So I'm speaking specifically to the students who are here. Go off campus. And that the Overground Railroad was really started with this idea of, I and Norm argued about this a ton, but we rooted it in the Jesuit ideas of accompaniment and encounter, which are, I'm the last person that should be explaining this in this room, but it's from the life of Jesus in being where, like, physically, who are you proximate to? Who are you next to? And the way I describe encounter is if you are with people that you disagree with and you're forced to spend time with them, you can't help but fall in love with them. And if you are with people, like, the city historically, structurally has been so divided. So go be where you're not expected to be, and not to serve or fix anything, but just to be, and fall in love with people. And then when you guys are all being formed to be amazing leaders. When you are, like, let that stuff discomfort you for the rest of your life, right? So that take what the education that you're being given and use it for the betterment of the people that you fell in love with. So that's the one thing I would say is go off campus.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of students in this room, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you stand up for me? Students from SLU, stand up. If you want to know what the social change agents look like of the future, look around you right now. It's an impressive group. In my classes, I try yeah, you can sit down. Sorry. Professor Sokol made us stand up. In my classes, I try to at least bridge that gap. If we happen to be in class on campus, I try to bring some of our community partners to share their stories. LifeWise STL that was over here has visited my class on more than one occasion. They have at least one of my students, Lily, who's working there weekly now. Another group that kind of practices radical inclusion with folks who have disabilities, L'Arche St. Louis, has also visited my class, former students who are now working for that organization. And one of them out there, Tina, who's got her hand up, is going to be working there this summer. And I think that connection happened in a class. And I think, SLU as an institution can help with that bridge to the community, and certainly folks who are studying social work. I see several former students in the audience, so it's kind of funny that I know the seed has been planted. Then they are some of that has to do with this institution, and I'm grateful to be part of it. And also I should point out Bobby Wassel, who was not acknowledged at the beginning, is here. If you want to connect with community, the Center for Social Action, the director's sitting in the second row up here, and he can tell you all the places and all the volunteer opportunities that are out there so that you can be adjacent and accompany people.
I would just add to that, when you are at community meetings or meetings about some issue, speak up and volunteer to carry the ball. I think about when I first met Dr. Kuhlman. I was giving a tedious talk with some other foundation people about funding. And I said, if somebody has an idea, come up and talk to me. And she did. And her research on access to period products basically resulted in the diaper bank of St. Louis taking on that as an issue. And now you can pick up free period products at places like libraries and so on. She did a small research project that was covered by the London Times. That was my favorite bit of coverage, was the London Times. And this was for less than $10,000. And she was able to really change access for a lot of people here in St. Louis, bringing her international research here home. And that's because she spoke up. She did. And that's what it takes. Sometimes you just have to say, hey, I've got an idea, and carry it forward. Don't be shy. Speak up.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences and your insights tonight. I think it's clear that Norm's legacy lives on through your work. And as we reflect on building a better future for those who come after, I hope everyone leaves not just inspired, but with a sense of how they can be a part of that work moving forward. Can you all please join me in thanking our panelists for being here tonight? Well, I was going to say let's give them a round of applause, but you all already did that. So thank you guys so much. Now, I have the pleasure of welcoming our esteemed criminology and criminal justice faculty member, Professor Kenya Brumfield Young, to the podium to recognize the graduating CCJ student recipient of this year's Dr. Norman White Service and Justice Award.
Here to deny. Thank you, Becca. And thank you again to our panelists for sharing their experiences and their insight tonight. Hearing how Norm's vision continues to inspire actions in our community and even beyond reminds us why we gather. As we move into this next part of the evening, we're proud to recognize the student who best embodies that same commitment to service, justice, and community. Each year, the Dr. Norman White Service and Justice Award is given to an undergraduate criminology and criminal justice student who exemplifies values that Norm held so dearly. It's a pleasure to recognize Jesse Dries as this year's recipient of the Norm White Service and Justice Award. Please join me in giving him a warm round of applause. Jesse is an exceptional student whose record reflects a strong and sustained commitment to service and justice and community. A double major in criminology and criminal justice and political science, he has managed to maintain a 4.0 GPA while distinguishing himself through leadership, scholarship, and service across St. Louis University. One especially meaningful part of Jesse's record is his involvement with the Overground Railroad. Okay, it turns, I promise it does. It's the Overground Railroad Literacy Tutoring Club. Because Overground was one of Norm White's passions, Jesse's commitment to this work is particularly fitting in light of the legacy this award honors. This literacy program is about way more than tutoring. It's about relationship building, educational commitment, and showing up for young people in this community in consistent and genuine ways. Jesse has demonstrated the same spirit through his involvement in service. In addition to that work, Jesse has served as the president of the Criminology and Criminal Justice Club, held a position in the president's office, and completed internships with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department's Gun Crimes Intelligence Center and the Missouri State Court of Appeals. He's also been recognized for his academic achievement and leadership and the Spirit of Billiken Award recipient and the recipient of the James D. Collins Outstanding Senior Award, and most recently, SGA's Unsung Hero Award. What makes Jesse especially deserving of this recognition is his accomplishments extend way beyond what is on paper. He's known as thoughtful, dependable, and community-minded person who represents the value and service and justice in meaningful ways. He's the kind of student who makes lasting impressions on those around him and brings pride to his program and to the university. So once again, please join me in congratulating Jesse.
Hi again. I just want to say one final time, a huge thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate the remarkable legacy of our colleague and friend, Norm. Your presence and dedication and community honor the values he lived by. While our formal program does conclude here, I hope you leave inspired to carry this work forward in your communities and beyond. Thank you again for being with us tonight. We are so incredibly grateful for your presence. Good night.